Andy, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. Tell me about your business. Tell me where you guys are located. Give me your website address, all that good stuff.
Sure, I've got a couple. So let
All
me
right,
start with the
sounds
first
good.
one. So I think most people know me from Daughter of Design, which is a wedding planning company, mostly based out of New York City, but I myself am out of Miami Beach the last few years. And, you know, we focus on, a lot of our clients come from the Northeast, but I can't really say what city I do most of our weddings in, because honestly, last year we did no two same cities.
Yeah.
You know, it's these days, I mean, we'll see what happens now with everything, but destination and going somewhere was absolutely a prime motivation. So I don't usually call myself like a destination planner, but we do tend to do quite a few destination events.
Like all over the US or all over the world, or?
All over the world. So, and in addition to weddings, I also do corporate. So, I mean, last year I was in Greece, Italy, France, and Japan.
Nice.
Awesome. And then like various US cities.
Yeah.
So we just really kind of go over.
Website address is daughterofdesign.com, I take it?
Daughterofdesign.com is the wedding planning side. And then from that, I mean, we have recently started Plannie.com, which is like Annie, but Plannie. And that's a site where you can hire an event planner and work with them by the hour. And we have local experts in every city. So this is kind of, you know, changing up and hopefully, democratizing the way that you can access a wedding planner. And again, not just for weddings, but all events, but for these purposes, weddings, and being able to work with a planner, but not have that long-term commitment or have a package that is maybe larger than you might need for your situation. So it's kind of just giving that flexibility and also being able to work with someone virtually, which is a big bonus these days.
Yeah. What was the inspiration behind that? Because I feel like that's kind of where the market is shifting to, where people need help, but it's not the full help in general.
Yeah. I mean, I've been watching that. I'm a trend watcher myself, and I've been noticing that there are virtual apps, and I watch, and I study the stats that you post and others post, and more clients are using some sort of mobile app, virtual app. So you see that growing trend of people being comfortable using other forms of wedding planning, not just an actual, old school planner or flipping through a book. Like, who wants to read a binder full of facts these days? And at the same time, more and more clients, the stats show, are planning remotely, meaning that they don't live anywhere near the city that they're getting married in, actually. So you see that there's that distance, and I kind of feel like there's that growing need of a local expert and a local planner. And at the same time, look, I'm a planner, and what I started doing, I mean, I've been in business since, 2006. So around 2009, it was really because I noticed I was losing some sales because I was pricing them out, or, they weren't sure if they were going to end up working with a planner in Italy, or they wanted someone based in New York. So because of that problem, I started offering hourly planning myself. And so I've been doing that for 11 years, and it's honestly my favorite thing to do. And it feels good too, because I'm helping them, and they're so grateful for the time and direction, because otherwise they're totally on their own and lost. Yep. And for me, I don't even technically need to go to some of these events. Some of these events, they just hire me to consult, and then they are fine to not have someone there on the day of. So there are only so many weekends in a given year.
Right.
So it's really helping me, create that second source of revenue on the resources that I have, which is my knowledge and expertise.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you started doing the hourly thing, were you looking for opportunities to kind of reach down into the market a little bit and go, look, I'm missing out on some business. What could I do? Right? Like, as a business owner, you're thinking about, I've got these things that I do normally, right? Full planning, full event coordination or whatever. But what are the opportunities for me as a business owner that I'm missing out on? Is that where the inspiration came?
Absolutely. So it came from, I was losing a certain clientele that had that wanted my expertise, wanted my level of taste, yet we had a gap because they have a budget, but they don't have quite enough that I would feel fair, charging them my full fee.
Yeah.
So I started looking for, I'm a problem solver. So I like to find solutions. And I was just thinking, like, how can we still work together? That I feel compensated and that you feel like is fair. We've all tried doing a partial package, but I think I'm going to do less. They think they're going to get more. So that wasn't quite the answer. I tried that for many years and it really didn't work out because expectations were so off. But the hourly, and then the other real big thing is, and I really, I credit a lot of the TV shows and the blogs and the, social media, but because wedding became such a hot topic, right? And especially the visual component of it really increased. And so people started having this like obsession about having a beautiful wedding and having a wedding planner. And I noticed maybe around a few years after, what was that first awful show, Bridezilla?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I started to get inquiries from clients with very like below national average budgets, and they were reaching out to me for a planner, and it would happen quite often, and it made me realize, wow, okay, so even like a $15,000, $20,000 bride is in the market for a planner.
Yeah.
And so that kind of started leading me down the road of like, okay, so this is a growing trend where people want access to a planner. I'm not the right fit, but our industry is growing. I mean, we'll see what it is after all this, but it was growing by 11% annually. And the events industry was one of the largest growing industries. So we'll see how that's affected. But, there has been a supply that's, I feel like, come into the marketplace to accommodate that. But there is something about, I really wanted to democratize wedding planning in a way that, like, Uber has democratized having a chauffeur or a driver. Everyone can have one now. And so I kind of wanted to give that same availability and access.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think you're right, because even couples that are having a $10,000 wedding could use some planning experience or help, right? Because the reality is there's so much information out there. I think that people are just going nuts trying to figure out what to do sometimes. I mean, even people that have been at weddings before, maybe had friends that have done weddings, they're still going crazy. I've got nieces that are like going nuts because they don't know what to do, right? It's like, they're freaking out. And so their mom's helping out and sisters are helping out. And it's like, oh my God, great. Everybody.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point, because a lot of people were like, now all these magazines and blogs, they just list out who all the vendors are. You're going to see, there goes our secret Rolodex, and your, planners are going to be obsolete. But actually something different happened in that there are too many options. And it's impossible to know. I don't know. Everyone's a hobbyist. Everyone's a photographer. Everyone's a DJ. And so how do you know who are the real solid people? How do you know that photographer didn't take just one awesome shot and then can't actually deliver? Yeah, I can't actually deliver on a full album.
Yeah.
So,
well, and then there's friends, right? So people that have, have a lot of friends, especially millennials, they have a lot more friends than, my generation. So their friends are photographers or DJs or whatever. They're going, yeah, I'll do it for you. Or I'll don't worry about it. Right. So, those things impact the rest of the market. And the reality is that, like, when it's a low barrier to entry product, like a planner, unfortunately, and photography and DJ, it actually allows a lot of people to get into the market and then puts pressure on everything. Right?
Correct. There's a lot of hobbyists. There's no certification or kind of license or degree that you have to have in order to do what we do. So it's like, I planned my sister's wedding. I think I'm a wedding planner now. So but then, there are ways, and like, especially like as I build Plannie and the platform, there will be ways in which we find ways to accredit and vet out
You
the
have
real
to.
planners.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about the Plannie thing. When is that already live? Are you launching it already?
So I have, I don't know if you're familiar with like techie terms like MVP, but I have
Yep.
a starter site, and currently we're still testing out a bunch of different models, so we have a live site. I've definitely got a lot of planners in many, many cities around the world. And now it's just a matter of testing out and ironing out the exact model that we'll be moving forward with in V2. But it's a fully functioning website. So we're here to help if you know anyone who needs a little help.
Yeah. I'll go check it out personally. I'm a tech guy anyway. I know about MVP and DevOps and all that good stuff. So tell me about the other side of your business, which is Daughter of Design. What was the inspiration there for you getting into planning in the first place?
Yeah. So, I graduated college around the tech.com boost, or the .com bust boost.
Yeah, around 2000.
So right around then I graduated, and I had wanted to work in events. I was actually all through college, I interned with the San Francisco Opera, and I worked in marketing and I worked in events, and I never thought about weddings. I just really was quite event focused and arts and all that kind of stuff. But if you were around that time, that it was kind of like how it is now, or any recession, where no one was doing a party. No one was, not even a holiday party in a conference room. It was just really bleak. And the only person hiring for doing events was a local Bay Area wedding planner, because there's something about weddings that are a little bit recession proof, right? And most people don't call off their wedding. Now is a totally different, we can't even talk about like now in a normal situation.
This is completely different. Yeah.
But in regular recessions, people usually don't, completely cut out their weddings or postpone it for years and years because it doesn't look good for their brand or whatnot. So I worked with her, and then eventually ended up moving to New York City, and I worked with BizBash. I'm not sure if you're familiar. So I did a short little internship with them, and then I ended up at the Tribeca Film Festival.
Nice.
So all of this, and by the time I'm at Tribeca, I think I'm just gonna do events, right? I'm not even looking at my past and my stop in weddings. But then working at Tribeca, I used to always joke that they paid me in hors d'oeuvres. Like, I went to the coolest parties, but I made no money.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, I was like, gosh, I've never waitressed, I've never worked retail. What can I do in New York City? You have to be like a model to be a hostess in the city. So I started just telling friends of friends, like, well, I used to do wedding planning, so I can do that, kind of like moonlight and do that on the side. And then sure enough, I would say within a year and a half, I was fully working 2 jobs, like lunch breaks and all evenings. I'd run home, do all the wedding work. And it got to a point where I realized that I have enough on the books here. I'm just going to go ahead and do this full time. And then whatever, if it doesn't work out, then I'll just get a job somewhere.
I could start over somewhere. Yeah.
Right. And then so that first year we grew by almost 200%.
Wow.
So it's kind of one of those things where, and it was 2008 when I went full time.
Yeah, right. And the other recession, right?
Right. So I was like, oh, geez, of course, planner's going to be the first thing to go, but it wasn't. And I think because I was a somewhat newcomer, my rates at that time weren't as high. And so maybe I was getting some of the market share because of my rates were a little favorable at the time that it needed to be.
Yeah.
But it kept on growing year and year, and very proud that this year it just got announced, it was our second year being on the top planners of the world list by Harper's Bazaar.
Nice. And
we are on the top planner list with Martha Stewart, Brides, The Knot, Party Slate, Harper's Bazaar. I'm really just missing Vogue. Vogue it's like, if there's an EGOT for a wedding industry, you have to have Vogue as well. And I've been trying to get that. So if anyone out there knows someone at Vogue, get me on that list.
Put you on the list, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome. And so most of your clients, I would take it, come from referrals from people that you've already done business with?
You know, and I should be better about tracking that. I would say yes. I would say 80% know either someone like someone because they were a guest or their friend, or this huge wedding we just did, it was their best friend's sister's wedding. You know, so there's always some kind of link. And that, to me, honestly, I prefer a referral that comes from that, because they're already in some way vetted. Because like I was saying, like, we do get those inquiries of, you know, the $50,000 wedding, which is $50,000 is a lot of money, but you know, unfortunately.
Well, at your level, it's different, right? So, I mean, you're at a different level. And so, I mean, I totally get it. Most of your referrals are going to come from people that have been at your big events that you've done, right? I mean, that's the way it should be for you. I mean, that's just how it works at your level. I mean, honestly.
So that's really our full service referral. And then a lot of the blind inquiries that we get in, if those don't turn into full, a lot of the time, that's when I'll try to capture them with hourlies, like hourly packages.
Yeah, good.
You know, it's like the last thing before they leave the door. I'm like, wait, I have an idea.
I got something else for you.
Yeah, if you didn't like any of the other stuff, I got something else. Hold
on. Stay right there.
So that's always, and I do try to, and I would say you know, there's a lot of interest there, like, at least, especially because I wish my SEO was better. I wish my advertising was better. It's really, if you're coming to us, if you've heard of us, know of us somehow. Mm-hmm. And so if they get that far, there's a real wish to work with us. Yeah. And so, you know, we'll try to find a way.
Something out, right?
Right. If we can't do it the traditional way, we'll try to find another way.
I mean, not everyone's going to be a good fit for you, right? I mean, and even those probably, I mean, in some cases it just may not work out, but, you know, I don't blame you. I would figure out ways to reach down and, you know, make sure that you can at least get the business if you can. That's a smart business person, in my opinion.
I mean, and on the other side, I mean, we talked about how it's going to, you know, Plannie and hourly is going to democratize event planning. Yeah. However, if you think about it, also, like, really one of my main goals is I want to revolutionize the way in which planners get compensated, because I think they're the only consultants who do not charge for their time. It's a flat rate, or it's a percentage model. And, you know, percentage, it's a little bit more fair, but at the same time, I had a client who we looked at 4 different locations. So when I say looked at locations, I'm not just talking about finding vendors. We did a full-on budget sheet, ran the whole schedule, found hotels, you know, figured out what the cost would be for every single city. And no, actually, we don't want to do Bordeaux. Can we look at Tuscany? Actually, no, not Tuscany. But after we put in like 40 hours and then 40 hours, and there's no way to recoup on that time. Yeah. So what I like about trying to change that model is just, I don't know, there's a lot of planners who if we really boiled it down, we would be making way less than minimum wage. No question. Right.
I totally agree with you. And that's a big thing for me when I'm talking to other planners. It's like, look, are you tracking your time? You know, because, you know, if you're not tracking your time, then you don't know how much money you're putting into this thing. And the next thing you know, you're spending 80 hours on a project that you're only making, you know, a couple bucks an hour if you do all the math, and it's ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. I agree with you. So I hope that works out. I hope you find a way to make that easier for planners to make more, you know, for what they're worth. Obviously, you got to put the work in to be good at what you do, but you should be compensated for it. I totally agree with that. So what would you say, like, I guess let's look at 2 models here. If someone was looking for a planner to help them, what would you say, you know, on the luxury side, like at the high level, you know, daughter of design level, what should they be thinking about? And then at the Plannie level, what do you think that they should be thinking about?
You mean when they're looking for the planner?
Yeah, when they're looking for a planner. Yeah.
Sure. So on the daughter of design level, when you're committing to a full service planner, I think it's very important that they you feel like they get you. They have to get your style. They're going to act as your representative. And so I'm going to be the one that goes and talks to your vendors, sometimes negotiate deals with them. So if you feel like I'm going to be a hothead, or it wouldn't be the same approach that you would have, and it makes you uncomfortable. You just have to feel like they're going to represent you both in style and both in demeanor, right? So it has to, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times, and or the way that you wish you could be. Like if you're a hothead and you know that you often upset people, or you rub them the wrong way, maybe having someone that has a little bit of a calmer, longer wig may be the right pair for you. And when it comes to full planning, I think you're going to interview them, and at the level that I'm at, you're going to want to obviously look at their work and make sure that they can handle the scale at which your event's going to be. So if you want a live performance by John Legend, be sure it's someone that knows how to deal with writers and staging and special, talent requests, and not someone who has no idea what the word writer means.
Yeah. Because there's a lot that goes into that, I'm sure, right? Like if you can have John Legend do your thing, you need to know the right people to get in touch with, coordinate all the stuff, and
And then on the plan, I'm sorry, on the planning side, right now it's really more about the location and the cost, right? And and then also there's different criteria. It really depends on why you are approaching a planner. Are you approaching them because you need someone to do a little bit more of the venue and vendor hunting as a local expert that knows the city and that knows what time of year is terrible to have a wedding in Tucson, or great, like here's a tip, you can go up to this mountain and it's fine? Or do you need someone who is that you can lean on for more design components, right? So there's going to be different ways to get paired with the right planner depending on what you're looking, because you could like my style. I know, like, let's say nothing about doing a wedding in Missouri, but you could still call me and lean on me if you know that you like my aesthetic. So it gives you you can kind of build a bear and make your own perfect little planner based on what good. What you're looking for.
That's good. Are there any questions like that couples should be prepared to ask someone that they might be trying to hire a planner?
I think there's things that you might want to ask how they typically work. And here's the thing, you can't usually test drive.
That's right.
You could with Plannie. That is actually kind of one of the other ways you could use it, is before you commit to a full service, you kind of want to date that person before you just go ahead and marry them, right?
Yeah.
So same concept, to be able to let you work with the planner to get a sense of how responsive are they? How many events do they do a year? Like, is it every Friday through Monday they have an out of office because they're doing something every weekend? You just want to know how available and accessible they're going to be to you. Because I think that's one of the main things that a lot of clients really look for in a planner is how responsive they are. Because even if I don't know the answer yet, I haven't heard back from the photographer yet, I always make sure we let you know. Still waiting to hear back from the photographer, because I always feel like I have to be in front of my client, not behind them, right?
That's right. That's good.
And so the way that, especially because of that, the way that my company is structured, we have different account executives, right? So every event has a designated account executive as well as me. And I try to be more of the creative director these days. And the account executive doesn't travel as much as I do typically, and isn't on every single event like me. And we space out when their next event is so they can give the proper attention that each client, needs.
Yeah.
So that's really, and then just kind of their communication style, all of that. It's hard to get off of the first 1 hour meeting or 30-minute call and just be great, you sound fantastic.
Yeah. That's why I was asking what questions, in their head should they be thinking about when they're trying to interview someone as a planner, right? To ask, what questions should I be asking to make sure I'm getting someone that really knows what they're doing, right? Those are good responses for sure. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about the business side of things. not considering what's happening today, but in general, for you as a business owner, what's been working well for you guys?
So I will say, I mean, of course, social media, there is everyone knows that, like, it's not a secret to be like, oh, you should Instagram and you should also now get on TikTok. But it is a source of, if not a source of new clients, in that sometimes they are hashtagging, but the wedding planner hashtags are so heavily used. It's hard to stand out there, right?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
really hard to like stand out, because like if I post New York City wedding planner, I'm gonna get like clobbered and pushed down in a day. Not even a day, half a day.
An hour nowadays.
An hour, probably, right?
Yeah.
There's someone who's just like, they're just tagging everything, right?
Yeah.
But there is something about, I stay connected with all my past clients, and I stay connected with a lot of venues and vendors and people that you just want to pass their mind once in a while, like, oh yeah, I should tell Amanda about Annie. I forgot. Like, you just saw me in your feed. We just had like some kind of interaction. So it's the new socializing, right? And the new networking. And so I think it's really important to be on there, and that's a big way that I see that I keep a lot of my business connections up, and a way I get a lot of my business leads. Let me see, what else has worked for us? I mean, the hourly has worked out fantastic for us.
Nice.
And because a lot of those hourly clients will also then ask us to add on and be month of, at least have some staff to run the day of the event and make them timelines and things. So then a lot of the time it's kind of like we're adding the fries with that later on.
Yeah.
And so there's that additional income that we're getting because of that. So that's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome that you said that, because I was talking to a videographer a couple of weeks ago. I was interviewing him. He has 3 different brands, and the purpose for the lower brand is to reach down into the market, get some people in that space, and then he says 20% of them kind of level up to a different product altogether.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of people would you say for you has like added on other things and been able to grow just out of that hourly opportunity?
I would say like 95.
Really?
Most.
That's awesome. Yeah. As soon as they see how you work, right? It's almost like you said, right? It's like you try them out. They're trying you out a little bit, right? And then they see how you work. They go, oh yeah, we love her. Let's do more.
I mean, I don't like, I feel bad sometimes, but I have clients who they can't trust, like once they get connected to you, and they know that they can trust what you're saying, they almost can't trust making the decision without you. And so I'll get like, what do you think about this green or this green? And I'm like, yeah, that green. They're like, okay, great. So it's kind of, they can't imagine not having you anymore. And I always liken having a wedding planner to having an accountant, because legally we can do our own taxes. But once you've worked with an accountant, you never want to go back to doing like TurboTax, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Once you know how like reassuring it is, and how easy it is to be like, I got this letter in the mail from the IRS. Am I supposed to do anything? And then, my accountant, Matt, will be like, yes, it's fine. We'll take care of it. I'm like, great.
Yeah. I love that too, right? That's why we have accountants. That brings me a different question. Like, do you often feel anxiety or, separation anxiety after the event's done with your couples, because of that, right? Like, they're constantly, what do you think about this? And then you build this relationship, and then all of a sudden, you're no longer working with them.
I mean, I would say I probably don't feel the separation anxiety. If anyone does, it would be on their side. Like I have a lot of clients say, like, especially like when we hit the day of, right? And we're like really like catering and just like making sure they've got everything. They don't have to think. And then they usually say some kind of comment of like, how am I going to go back to regular life? Or like, how am I going to do things without you?
Yeah.
And that's actually like another reason for planning, is like, I have so many clients who come back to me because they get so used to just being able to ask me questions. Mm-hmm. So then I get a lot of, hey, I'm doing my friend's shower. What's a good restaurant? And then the next thing is then, and what are some florists you like for that? I'm like, my God, I'm planning this thing now.
Yeah, right.
So it's
Here's my hourly
nice
rate.
way.
Let me show you. Right?
Yeah, it's a nice way to kind of offload and be like, hey, why don't we do a couple hours and I'm happy to help you.
Yes.
Because I know I'm going to spend 3 hours, 4 hours talking to them about how to do this perfect baby shower or whatever it might be.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But,
So
yeah.
what would you say have been like your biggest challenges over the past couple of years as a business owner?
You know, I mean, it sounds like a really odd problem, but it is a little bit of a double-edged sword when you get to a certain level, because I think once I hit that Harper's Bazaar list, and I'm in there with like the Brian Raffinellis and the Marcy Blooms and the, you know, and they just automatically, certain folks think that you're not approachable because you must only do multi-million-dollar weddings, which is not the, you know, not the case. Like, we very much, you know, there's still a certain very bread and butter market, but I feel like a lot of those see a title like that or see the company that you're in and assume that you are only doing celebrity weddings or only doing a certain caliber. So, and I will, you know, and recent work has kind of reflected that and shown that we've been doing like the mega yacht, you know, weddings in Amalfi and things like that. So it's, our recent portfolio is kind of not helping that as well because it's reinforcing it. But yeah, just kind of get like increasing in reputation, which has decreased our inquiries from kind of what has been our bread and butter market. Yeah.
So not being able, you know, feeling less approachable by people that are like, look at that and go, man, that's way out of my realm.
I knew the planner who had done, oh my gosh, I don't know her last name, Bethany Frankel. Do you remember Bethany Frankel from, she was a Real Housewife. She she came up with skinny girl cocktails and all that.
That's right. Yeah.
So he had done her wedding, but first of all, for like nothing. And then she had a whole TV show around her wedding, right? So he was on the show as well. And I think he probably did it for the exposure, but then not realizing that a lot of people, once they saw him on the show, if they didn't like her or her style, thought that he was some kind of, you know, one trick pony that could only do that one look. And it's like, oh, that's so not me. So then he lost those. And then immediately, wow, you're a celebrity planner, then I can't afford you. And then lost also a lot of his bread and butter business as well.
Yeah, so that's a tough challenge, actually. I mean, and I think as a business owner, you know, people in the planning space, they think about getting to that level, but they don't think about those challenges, right? And I think the interesting thing about what you're doing by creating like Plannie and thinking about the hourly thing is being able to work yourself back down into that other space. You know, so that you do become more approachable, right? And you may have some, I don't know, you may have some more challenges later trying to figure out how to be even more approachable, right? As you continue to grow your portfolio and the daughter of design piece.
And I mean, that's exactly like, that's why I avoid certain titles. Like I avoid the title of destination planner. I avoid titles like luxury planner or celebrity planner. I don't want those titles because I know that there's as much of a positive effect they can have, they have almost double the negative impact on it as well. Because I don't want to lose domestic events because they think I only do destination and so on.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever looked at it like that. And I'm sure some people don't really think about that, you know, that are trying to get up to that level at all. If you had to go back and tell yourself something 5 years ago, what would you tell yourself?
Ooh, if I could tell myself something 5 years ago was what? 5 years ago, it was probably at a high point in Daughter of Design, in that I had the account executive set up. I was like, I kind of got down to that like 15-hour work week somehow. Like I felt like I had figured it out and I was on the top of the world. And then, you know, 2017, 2007, no, 2000, right into going into 2016. I think it was because it was, some people say because it's an election year, or I don't know if that's where I had a turn in my business where I did get a little bit, regarded higher. And so that created a shift, or, whatever it might have been. But suddenly my wedding business plummeted. Like the amount of the inquiries I had, I wasn't getting my bread and butter clients inquiring anymore, and there's very few fish in the higher pools.
Very few.
Yeah. So it's hard to go fishing in that pool, and then so I went from having the highest, one of my biggest years in salary, working the fewest hours that I had, to having to let go of some of my team and reclaim some of the work that I had farmed out, because I had to retain as much of the income as I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was such a disparity. So what I would have told myself 5 years ago is, your shit's not that hot. Like, you're not going to stay on, this is not a forever mode. Be prepared. You're going to have peaks and valleys. And also, what I really hardcore learned out of that valley was diversify what you do. And that's when I started really taking on a lot of the corporate work. And it has been a savior, because the last 2 years, if I'd relied on weddings alone, I would not have made the salary that I've, built up and like I'm kind of like become accustomed to. Versus now, my corporate business is so quiet, and I'm leaning hard back on the wedding side.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, like, I more than ever see the health of having that diverse portfolio in what you do, and being able to do corporate when that season's good, and then doing some wedding when that season's good.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people don't do that. But I know people that have been successful do. They look at, how do I diversify various different pieces of my business so that I can deal with the peaks and valleys and stuff. And that's great advice.
And just, this is extra, but like there's a lot of new and up and coming wedding planners that I speak to. And one of the first things I always tell them is, don't name your company something that just sounds like it could only do weddings.
Yeah.
Because you're really pigeonholing yourself, and you could be doing so many different kinds of events. You don't want to be like wedding bells occasions, because that sounds like that's all you do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Especially if you're only going to do planning per se, right? I think that's great that you don't pigeonhole yourself into only weddings. Make your name something that's more universal. That's actually something that I thought about too. Like, I have thought about in the past, later on in my data career with the wedding report. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, but there's so many other opportunities in the data space for events data. I mean, I'm talking like death and birth and all kinds of different types of life events. And I often go back to my business name, the wedding report. It's incorporated. And I'm like, I should have probably named it something different,
Right.
So that I could have one corporation, and then basically you can have multiple products within the corporation.
Right.
But then, I thought about it a little bit, but the other interesting thing about that is, if that ever offshoots into something that I could sell later, then, you're just selling that brand of it, right? And then you have this other brand over here that you're doing for death and for whatever. So I guess there's multiple strategies you could put around that, but yeah.
There's a lot. There's also some truth in being specializing in one thing, right? Like every business school, every tech, talk, they'll always tell you, do one thing, be great at that, be known at that, and then you can kind of spin off to other things. So, that's what they invented DBAs for. So you don't be worried, like if you're the wedding reporter.
I know, right? So, last question. What is your most inspirational or best wedding story that you have?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to use the story of kind of how I grew. And I don't know if you know who David Beam is. But
No.
David Beam is a very well-known event designer, right? So I use him as a little bit of a bellwether of my career. And I remember when I still have every single cover letter that I sent out begging people to be their free interns. And this is back in 2000. When did I move to New York City? 2006. I moved to New York City. And I have the letter that I sent to David Beam asking if I could be his free intern, right? And they never wrote me back. And 2 years later, was it 2 years? Let me think. I think it's 3 years later from the date of that letter, I had by then, because no one hired me, started my own company because there was no other option.
Yeah,
started
right.
started my own other company and had gotten to the point where I started to have a little bit of a name 3 years later. So then I got invited to this very exclusive, there's a New York City caterer called Creative Edge, and it was their 20th anniversary. And they're one of the, I mean, top caterers. They do the best, and they work with the best venues, right? And so they could only have 100 people come to this party because of the size of the venue. And I could not believe that I was on that list.
Wow.
And not only was I on that list, I sat next to David Beam. So, and David, and I had never met him before. And by the end of that dinner, he had said, Annie, you should come over to our studio. I'd love to show you some of our work. And in my head, I'm just thinking, I can't believe David Beam's trying to pitch me to work with him, right?
Right.
3 years ago, I was begging to be his intern. And then fast forward again in 2012, I did the Knot Gala. So every year the Knot does this big annual gala during the fall fashion week. And it was the third annual one, I believe. Is the second or third? I think I was the third year. So I did this gala, which was just, I mean, to be the one to do the gala, and I'm, still somewhat of a, emerging company. I thought it was like
that's awesome.
insane. And the designer that they paired me with was David Beam. So I'm just, pinching myself like, I can't believe I'm doing this gala with David Beam. And then fast forward, we did a wedding in 2016, and we had been trying to work together for years, but finally in 2016 we had our first wedding together at Rainbow Room. And so it was this gorgeous like wedding. And at the setup, I gave him a letter, which basically was like my original cover letter.
Really?
A letter on top saying, "Dear Mr. Beam, I'm just following up on my letter sent like whatever of 2006." And I didn't realize, like, I was just doing it as a joke, and he cried. And it was just like, and to me, it was, when I think of that story, it just reminds me, no matter how, like how many, best of wedding planner, that kind of, those kind of lists I'm on, it reminds me of like, gosh, when I was young and hungry, and every cover letter I get, I still read. And I keep a file of every single one of them, because I know one of these days, one of these young kids who are asking me for a free internship is going to be someone, like.
Oh, that's great. It's funny how we, like, when we go through those things, the hard stuff to learn, right? Who we are, that we pick up on those things like you did, right? Like, you always read the cover letters, you always look at it. You took that from that experience and made that part of your who you are, right? Like, as a person. I think that's awesome. So, well,
here's, and if this is kind of a perfect way to end this, is at dinner parties, when we used to have dinner parties with people, one of my favorite questions I usually ask the table is, what's the worst thing that happened to you that led to one of the best things that happened to you? Because if you look back at any of the progress that we've made, it's usually because something was uncomfortable. And so we had to make the change, right? If we're fat and happy, we're never going to look for a new job or change our hair or whatever it might be. And like, so in light of that, I kind of just want to leave it in times like post-COVID, post whatever, and whatever situation you're in with your business, don't look at that uncomfortable moment that you're having as just negative. It's really an opportunity to change and improve.
Yes, that's awesome. Annie, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. It's nice talking to you.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. I hope that you found it helpful. Please share it with other people. Also, if you're getting married or you work in the wedding industry, I would love to interview and share your information with other people. Send me a text, 520-399-8580, or shoot me an email at letschat@wedding.report.